Ever feel like you're doing all the right things and still wondering why your body feels off? You eat well, you train hard, your labs say you're fine, but deep down you know something's slipping. You're not alone and you're not crazy. I'm Daniel Rasmussen, founder of Echelon Center for Longevity, and I've spent 2 decades helping high performers like you to reverse aging, reignite vitality, and finally get answers. On Unbreakable Vitality, we go upstream. We talk peptides, stem cells, precision diagnostic testing, reversing the age of your arteries, all the innovative science-based tools to take back your health span so that your next decades are your best yet. Because aging is real, but decline is optional.
Disclaimer. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. The topics we discuss often involve emerging research, longevity medicine, peptides, nutrition, and health optimization strategies. Nothing in this episode should be interpreted as a recommendation, diagnosis, or treatment plan for any individual. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your medications, supplements, diet, exercise program, or medical care.
Welcome back to Unbreakable Vitality. Today we're talking about one of the biggest misunderstandings in the peptide world. The idea that peptides themselves are the solution, because right now peptides are exploding in popularity, and understandably so. They work. People are hearing stories about fat loss, recovery, anti-aging, better energy, muscle preservation, improved body composition. They're thinking this sounds incredible. Sometimes it is, but here's the problem. Not everyone gets those results. Some people improve dramatically, others plateau. I can tell you from clinical experience, this is true. Others feel almost nothing. And this creates confusion. People start wondering, did I choose the wrong peptide? Do I need a higher dose? Should I stack more compounds? Which usually leads to the modern biohacker strategy of just refrigerate more things and hope for the best. That's not a system. That's an expensive confusion with the refrigeration requirements. A lot of people enter into the peptide space with the very high expectations. They want instant results. They want it right now. They want it all, and they want it right now. And because the peptides are expensive, they're like, if I don't see results in a month, I'm moving on. Often those expectations are built from social media highlight reels. Nobody posts. Day 47, still inflamed, sleeping badly, and questioning my life choices. They post the transformation after it's happened, the before and after. Instant gratification, the dramatic success story, overnight success story. So naturally, people assume that this is how it goes for everyone. If I use the same peptide, I should get the same result. But biology does not work that way, I can tell you, because peptides do not override your physiology. They interact with it. This is the missing link. The body has to be capable of responding to the signal, which is the peptide. And that depends entirely on the environment that the peptide enters. For example, you can take a recovery peptide, but if inflammation is elevated, sleep is poor, cortisol is chronically high, nutrition is inadequate, or your mitochondria function is impaired, the response is going to be blunted. It's going to be slow, and not because the peptide failed, but because the system itself was not prepared to adapt to it. It's as simple as that. The science is simple. Peptides are signaling molecules. They're not compounds. They're not drugs. They're not supplements. They send instructions. But receptors and tissues and mitochondria, inflammatory pathways, all your hormones and your metabolic systems all influence how those instructions are interpreted, which means two people can use the exact same peptide stack and get a completely different outcome. Let me tell you an example. I'm working with a guy right now. He's 57. He came in working with us to our program, just guns a slinging. He's a retired CFO, and he wants results right now. And I'm telling him, look, we work with people minimum 1 year. Most of our clients are working with us for 3 years, because it takes just the first year just to start doing a reset of their physiology, and so 3 months into it, he's like, I'm not seeing results. My body composition isn't changing yet. I'm still not sleeping great. I'm like, the trends are showing that you're clearly getting better. You're starting to sleep. We're starting to dial in your sleep. We're starting to lose your body composition. Just give it more time. You got to get that inflammation level down. You got to get your insulin resistance down. He doesn't understand that there's a time scale to the physiology responding to a consistent signal. And then before his body has time to adapt and respond. He wants to change everything all over again and change the signals. Two people can use the exact same peptide stack and get completely different outcomes. We put him on CJC ipamorelin, and it disrupted his sleep even worse. 99% of the time that we put people on that stack, they're sleeping like babies. So just illustrating that no two people are going to respond the exact same way to the exact same peptide. They might get completely different outcomes. One improves dramatically, the other barely notices anything, and the third has an opposite reaction. So the difference is rarely just the compound, it's the terrain. It's the terrain that those instructions are landing in. So this is where many people start making mistakes. I've seen it over and over. Instead of improving the system, they add more compounds. Well, let's just stack another thing on top, and let's add this, and let's add this, and let's try that other peptide. More peptides, more supplements, more complexity. Some people treat peptides like Pokemon cards. It's like, guys, chill. Just collect enough of them, and eventually something magical is going to happen. Well, physiology doesn't reward randomness, it rewards coherence. So when we evaluate someone clinically, we're looking far beyond the peptide itself. We're asking, is your inflammation elevated? Is insulin resistance present? Is recovery impaired? Are there mitochondrial dysfunctions happening? How are your nutrients, your micronutrients and your macronutrients? Are they limiting adaptation? Is your sleep architecture disrupted? And why, if it is? Are stress hormones dysregulated? Have you been amped up and functioning at such a high level that you've got your whole central nervous system in a highly excitatory override mode apparatus 24/7? Because all those variables affect your response. And once those variables are brought back, corrected, peptides often become significantly more effective. So the real issue is not which peptide should I take or which peptide stack should I take. It's what environment am I creating for this peptide to work inside optimally? And that's a much more sophisticated question because it requires patience, it requires wisdom, it requires experience, and it's the difference between chasing interventions and building a longevity system around your physiology. The smartest approach is not aggressively stacking, it's strategic sequencing. And that means stabilize the system first, reduce inflammatory burden, improve recovery, support your metabolism, get that metabolic flexibility rewired back into the system, and then introduce targeted peptide therapies intentionally rather than haphazardly and emotionally based on what I heard on Instagram today or Instabro. Definitely not based on whoever's on the loudest reel, right? So if peptides haven't worked for you the way that you hoped, that doesn't mean that you failed. And it doesn't necessarily mean the peptide was wrong or the peptide was bunk. It often means the system underneath the peptide needed attention first. And once the terrain changes, everything changes. Sometimes there's some trial and error to this too. Even with advanced diagnostics, we can pinpoint a peptide that's going to be appropriate, and that individual's response rate is completely opposite to what we thought. And we have to trial and error it. It's an art as much of a science as it is a science. So peptides, are they powerful? You bet. But they are amplifiers. And an amplifier only works well when the underlying system is already functioning properly. And so that's why precision is so important, because the goal is not just to simply use peptides, it's creating a physiology capable of responding to them. Does that make sense? So if you're exploring peptides and you want to understand whether your body is actually prepared to respond optimally, we offer Healthspan assessment, and we evaluate your inflammation, your metabolic health, your recovery capacity, nutrient status, hormone balance, and whether a peptide strategy actually fits your physiology. I know some people come at us like, that's what I want. I want the peptides. Let's start with testing first so we can see which peptide is even going to be appropriate, or even if a peptide is appropriate at this point, rather than just throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and hope something sticks. No random stacking, no influencer protocols, just precision-based longevity medicine. Go to agelessfutureseattle.com, fill out our Healthspan assessment form, and let's have a conversation. No pressure. We'll see you then on the next one.